sometimes the grass isn't greener on the other side. It's green where you water it, and we water the grass here.
Tell us what it was like being at the dunk last night.
That was the most chaotic environment I've ever been in my life.
Friartown is Titletown tonight.
Here's Pip, guarded by Gillespie. Steps back, spins, fires! Woo! Pip gets!
Who run shit like me? Top 5 basically. I still play for keeps, ain't no fantasy, hey.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Divine Providence. This is Season 2, Episode 16. We are coming to you after 2 tough losses against our bitter rivals at this point. You know, Georgetown with Ed Cooley and the University of Connecticut just about 45 minutes away. So we're going to talk about that. We do not have Mike Eamon today. He is busy. If you do want to hear Mike, you can tune into Section 10. He has been on Section 10 doing a fantastic job. But me and Mac will throw it back to last year and take it from here. Mac, how are we doing today after a tough week in Friartown?
Yeah, dude, it's been a while since it's just been me and you, but like you said, Mike's been killing it on Section 10. So shout out Mike. Mike, you're dearly missed, and hopefully we'll see you in the next episode. To get to the negatives, yeah, I mean, you couldn't have probably drawn up a worse week as a Friar fan. You know, the loss to Georgetown, which I'm sure we're going to talk ad nauseum about. And then the loss to UConn, which, like, by the time the ball was tipped, it kind of felt like the season was kind of in shambles as is. But just a brutal week to be a Friar fan.
Definitely was. And there's so much bad to talk about. Before we get to the bad, I just want to express so much gratitude to everyone that made me feel so welcome. First game back at the AMP, since my kidney transplant, which happened December 8th. So it's been quite a while. This is the longest, gap of time that I've had during the season since I really started going for the most part. So just, so grateful from everyone, the Colettas for letting me sit in one of their seats on the floor right across from Ed Cooley. We were looking at each other the whole game. So now, I mean, the worst part is you didn't just lose to Georgetown. You lost to Ed Cooley, and you lost in a way where you dominated the entire game until about the last 7 minutes. And much like a lot of the losses this year, the wheels just completely came off, and you blew the game in a fashion that almost you thought was impossible. Mac, from your angle, how did you feel about the absolute meltdown that happened on Saturday?
Yeah. First off, obviously happy you were in the building. That was the first time I think I'd seen you in person since your transplant. So obviously glad you're doing well. But it feels like this Friars team is just inventing new ways to lose game in and game out. So, I mean, if you just backtrack to the first time we played UConn at the dunk, you're up 11 with 3 minutes to go, choke that lead, blow that lead. And you can say, you know what, listen, number 2 team in the country, whatever. You got to, Dan Hurley's a future Hall of Fame coach. You move forward. Your at-large chances are small, but they're still there. Then last week, you head to Marquette and just genuinely like you could play the Sports Center not top 10 music and just play the last 2 minutes of regulation because they were just finding ways to let Marquette back in the game. And then obviously with your at-large chances pretty much dust, you're looking ahead to the Georgetown game. You go up 20. The place is rocking. Fuck Ed Cooley chants are raining from the heavens. And then all of a sudden, the worst offensive team in the Big East just shoots their way back into a game. And it's happening too frequently with this Friars team, and it's frustrating.
Definitely. And you mentioned at-large chances, obviously. And the at-large chances really weren't dead officially, probably until the Marquette loss. Just kind of reminded me of the broadcast last night against UConn where Sparrow Diddy kept saying that PC's at-large chances were hanging by a thread. And I just kept being like, what thread is that? Like,
Yeah.
It is completely over. There's absolutely zero chance. And it's really unfortunate because, like I've said on the show before, this is the second January in a row where we've came to you talking about this team that we absolutely all just adore and put all of our time, energy, effort, some people money, some people, invest their entire winters into this. And it's not even February and we're completely out of the conversation for an at-large bid. So that's really tough. And how that happened was with Ed Cooley kind of having one of his typical Ed Cooley games where, we've seen him do that so many times when he coached here, which is kind of just hang around, and then take advantage of the other team being complacent. And that's really all it was. Georgetown is not a special team. They don't score the ball particularly well. They don't really defend as well as they were, at the beginning of the year when they beat Clemson and they had the win against Maryland and they beat Kentucky in the scrimmage there. So they don't do anything particularly well. But when the message is, hey, those guys on the other bench, they blow leads and they do it like better than anyone in the history of this league. Let's just hang around. Let's have some fun, see what happens. And surely it worked out. I mean, we were up by 23 points at one point in the second half. Is that correct? 23.
I believe the largest lead was 21, and I think there was 13 or so minutes to go.
Yeah. Okay. So, I mean, that's really all it was. Ed Cooley's message was, let's just hang around and see what happens. And they did, and they won.
And I mean, it's the scout is there for the Friars at this point. Like, hey man, we could be down 40 at halftime. We're still in this thing. And like rooting for a team like that. I was sitting at the game with Mike on Saturday, and I was like literally like planning, like, all right, after the game, like we're gonna fire off tweets, like we're gonna bullshit and just troll the shit out of Georgetown. And Mike's just like, dude, I don't feel good about this. And I'm sitting there like, all right, like I understand why he doesn't feel that way, like why you don't feel comfortable. But like, come on, man, we're up 20 points. You're like well into the second half. I'm just a friggin' blind optimist. But like when that is we talked about this team not having an identity. When your identity is just keep working them, you're still in the game. I don't care how many points you're down. You can come back and win. That's not exactly a fun thing to root for because you're never comfortable.
Never. And it, it's really, really hard to get behind the team and the coach when your last two losses were at Marquette and home versus Georgetown, regardless of the circumstances, regardless of how you lost, regardless of the backstories, Ed Cooley coming home and, Marquette and the Corey Floyd debacle at the end of the Marquette game. Bottom line is this is a results-based business. And you lost to the two worst teams in the Big East, besides maybe us, really. And, I think people look at this team and see a lot of potential and a lot of talent and a lot of ability, a lot of scoring ability. That's certainly for sure. But realistically, when you go back on the teams, Power 5 teams that are bad or have bad records, a lot of them are like this. Like, we're not that special. We are a team that does blow leads, that can put up a lot of points. But I'll tell you what, if you look back at some of the 15, 16 win Power 5 teams, like I said, a lot of them do that. And that's just a marker of a bad team. This is a bad team at this point. It doesn't mean it's a bad collection of players or talent. These players are good. So at some point you do have to kind of look at the coaching, whether it's, the head coach, whether it's assistant coaches. Again, I'm not going to lead a fire English campaign. At this point, I think we all can agree that a coaching change is more than likely needed, especially because of the temperature of the fan base and just how people feel at this point. So, at some point, you do just kind of have to blame the coaches, which is unfortunate.
Yeah, and I think, we've gone on record trying to be pretty neutral regardless of which way should Kim stay, should Kim go. The lost to Georgetown Saturday, maybe prisoner of the moment, but a lot of people I've been seeing say this may be the single worst loss like in the history of the program. And I've only been a fan of the team for 15, 16 years, but I don't know how crazy that is to say. Like, as far as like you blew a 20-point lead to a bottom of the barrel Big East team, and they have been that way for the better part of the last decade. Not to mention your arch rival was in the building and the entire crowd was chanting, "Fuck this guy." Like, just you couldn't have drawn up, I don't think, a worse loss for this team. And it's just demoralizing. Like, I think we've come on the show. We've tried to be neutral about should Kim stay, should Kim go. But it's just, I think it's the consensus at this point. Like, you got to part ways optics wise. I don't know if there's a way to rebound from this. It's just, and Kim could be a good coach somewhere else. Like, genuinely, I know I have a lot of stats prepared on why Kim hasn't worked out at Providence, but he could be a great coach somewhere. It's just I don't think you can bring him back for a year or 4.
Yeah, I think we can all agree. And, going back to what you said about, trying to stay neutral and, wanting it to work out, I think that we all wanted it to work out so badly. And we gave Kim every opportunity to win over the fan base. And he didn't really have to do anything to win over the fan base. I mean, immediately when he came into the position, he was really just like glazed, and we loved him and showed him so much just like support and love and passion. And I think he loved it, and he fed off of it. And we had all those, hot button cliches and different Kim English phrases, right? And people were in the mindset shirts, and I mean, I can still, like, you look at all the burners, and I mean, half the burner names are something to do with mindset, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, like, we gave him every opportunity, and I hate that the narrative will probably eventually spin to, PC fans, ran him out of town, and they weren't patient. But that's just not the case, and that's not reality. The reality is Kim took over a program that was in good shape because of the person we just lost to. And what happened is that we had one good season under Kim English where we didn't make the tournament, but that was an acceptably good first season. And since then, it's been 2 unbelievably bad seasons. So at some point, you have to just kind of say, hey, didn't work out. Hopefully it does work out for him somewhere else. But yeah, I'm not expecting Kim to return for year 4. I have no inside information or no knowledge, but I think that it's pretty much the writing is on the wall at this point.
You got me a little emotional right there, taking a little walk down memory lane, the start of the English era in Providence. And it started off well. I mean, like you were one of the last teams out in the tournament year 1. And naturally you just assume progression. Like, all right, it's only up from here. This is year 1. This is the stepping stone. And next year, Kim and the roster will take strides to get better. That obviously wasn't the case. And that's kind of why we're having the conversation now. But yeah, dude, it really did feel like a match made. I feel like we're giving a eulogy, but like it felt like a match made in heaven that year 1 with like the mindset stuff and like all these catchphrases, Kaizen, whatever, like you name it, chop wood. I mean, that was Nate Tomlinson, I think, but like,
still, yeah, no,
all these things like the fan base is rallying around, and Kim's like a young, energetic dude who kind of knows how to get reactions out of the fan base. We've talked about it, positive or negative. So, to see, I understand the frustration within the fan base, and like to see how it seems to be ending isn't indicative of, I think, the first year and a half, 2 years of his tenure. And, I don't want the narrative to be when Kim leaves, that's just like, oh, well, like you said, PC fans just ran him out of town, because that first year and a half, 2 years, like everyone was riding high. Everyone was behind him. Young coach with potential. So yeah, I hope that narrative of like PC fans are just like running him out of town doesn't stick. Like I hope it can just be kind of a peaceful transition, because it didn't work.
Yeah. No, I completely agree. It's unfortunate. What was I going to say? There was a very important thing that I was going to say, but I'll come back to it. Yeah, I mean, with Kim, I think that it might be the right guy somewhere else. Certainly here, it was the wrong time, and you just got to live with it. At the end of the day, you got to find the right hire. I think we'll talk about that a little bit more. Maybe who you want, who I want. There's a lot of options out there. I think that we've kind of honed in on maybe one or two guys that I think that most people would like to see here, but yeah, it's going to be a weird, kind of couple months with kind of a lame duck situation, right? Where at least it's expected. We don't know what could happen, but I know what I was going to say. The fan base was looking for any reason to get behind Kim, because I bet if you polled most of the fans at halftime of the first UConn game at home, when we had a big lead on UConn and we were coming off the St. John's on the road win, and I bet if you polled most of the fan base at that time and asked them, hey, how do you feel about Kim English? Would you give him a year 4? I bet a lot of people would have said yes, because it looked like he was steering the ship in the right direction, and we were finally turning it around and beating some good teams. Then you blew the lead against UConn, and you just haven't been the same since. Honestly, after the first UConn loss, I didn't really feel that bad. I was like, okay, this team is showing signs of life. You got at Xavier, you're going to go to Xavier. You blow their doors off, and then you got cupcake to get back on the right track, and you're good, and you still have that St. John's win. But you haven't been able to recover since blowing the lead at home versus UConn.
Yeah, it's tough. And even after you blew the lead to UConn, like I said, it's okay. You played the number 2 team in the country real close. You took them to overtime. Optics wise, you just beat St. John's. You take UConn to overtime, or I guess UConn took you to overtime. It's like, okay, manage the rest of the schedule. And I think, the argument that was out there for Kim to stay was, all right, give him another year of Jameer and Fox, and it'll obviously, the buyout won't be an issue. Maybe it's worth going a year 4, with this, pool of his own high school recruits. You drop to Marquette. You're lifeless against Villanova, even though the game was close. You drop to Georgetown, and you're not doing yourself any favors at all. Leb, I came prepared with some stats. Do you mind if I drop some on you?
Please, go ahead.
Cool. So Providence head coaches all time in games decided by 6 or less points or overtime. Number 1 is Ed Cooley. 64.8% of the time he won games decided by 6 or less or overtime.
Mm-hmm.
Pete Gillen is second at 56%. Rick Pitino at 53%. Rick Barnes is just under 42%. Keno Davis was at 41%. Tim Welsh was at 40%. And Kim English, after the loss to UConn, is 9-21 in games decided by 6 or less points or overtime. That's good for 30%. And even at George Mason, Kim was 11-16 in games decided by 5 or less points. So if it walks like a duck and it talks like a duck, it's probably a fucking duck. Kim English, without Devin Carter, so years 2 and 3 up to this point, is 21-32 overall, 10 of which are bye games. So if you disclude bye games, Kim English is 11-32 in what I would consider meaningful games.
Yep.
He's 8-22 in Big East play without Devin Carter. So I'm not sure what the percentage on that would be. Just over 25%. So you have a 1 in 4 chance at winning a Big East game. In his last 20 Big East regular season games, so a full Big East season, so half of this year, half last year, the Friars are 3-17. Since the 21-22 season, Leb, are you familiar with the DePaul Blue Demons?
I am, yes.
Yeah. So in the last, including this year, the last 5 years,
Mhm.
DePaul has only been worse than 3-17 once.
Yeah.
And that's not to compare us to DePaul, because I do think Providence is a much more historic program, storied program. It's a better job, better resources, better fan base. But just to put in context what the last, full Big East season worth of games has been like, it's been the equivalent of DePaul. So I don't think there's any argument you can make for Kim. I understand, like, you want to see the potential of a Jameer or a Vox. There are bigger sacrifices you have to make. There will be other Stephon Voxes. There will be other Jameer Joneses. I would love for the two of them to stay. And I really think, like, if you cut ties with Kim at the end of the year, you give both of them a blank check because they are both NBA guys. But there's absolutely no scenario where I think you can sign up for a year 4.
Yeah, and those numbers are, I mean, enough. Like, that's enough to have your mind made up right there. Like, there's when you lose close games in a habitual way like that, it's it is a coaching thing. It's a preparation thing, and don't get me wrong, like, there are some times this year where there might be some players where I'm like, oh, what are they doing? Like, what possessed them to do that? Jason Edwards against Butler, trying to draw the foul instead of kind of just passing it. Jameer Jones against Marquette and UConn, driving to the hoop instead of pulling it out and letting the clock run or forcing the other team to foul. So, like, the players aren't completely blameless, but ultimately, like, what one mistake like that with Jameer, it's on Jameer. The second one, it's really on the coaching, because you got to be able to correct issues like that, and then there's other things too that we all see: rebounding, defensive mentality, loose balls, turnovers, the preparation, inbounds plays. I mean, these are things that you can trace back to preparedness and coaching. So honestly, like, the year 4 thing, I think my door was open maybe, after the St. John's game, after the UConn game, but the door is completely shut at this point. And I couldn't agree with you more. Like, we shouldn't prioritize one player or two players over, the overall health of our program and finding a new coach.
Yeah, and I think I texted you and Mike a few weeks back and I think we've done a good job of recording like a day or two after a game, so we're not, too reactionary. But, in group chats, shooting the shit after a game, you're going to be reactionary, good or bad. I think I had a text that was sent to you and Mike, and it was basically along the lines of, we're becoming a glorified Rutgers. And we saw Rutgers produce 2 top 5 picks either last year or the year before. And it's like, okay, well, yeah, we have this like clear NBA talent on our roster, but it's not exactly translating to wins. And it's like almost like a Ben Simmons at LSU type of deal, where it's like, yeah, the NBA talent is clear. Like, you have it, but you're not winning games. And as a fan of a college basketball team, I think I said before, I don't give a fuck if another player gets drafted. Right. I want to see the Friars win games. Plain and simple. So, and it just feels like it was trending that way. And I get it with the NBA style offense, and you want to recruit guys because the ultimate goal is to get to the league. But like, from a fan base perspective, you want to see wins. It's the only stat I care about.
Yep.
And, I don't know. I also think another thing is the rotations. I know Leb, you kind of talked about a lot of things that kind of boil down to X's and O's. That's kind of kept us out of games. But the rotations are maddening.
Mm-hmm.
The Georgetown game, the fact that Jameer Jones I don't think he checked in the second half until like the 5-minute mark.
Mhm.
Played for a minute and a half and got pulled. Is malpractice. I had a tweet. I said that alone is a fireable offense. The fact that Jameer Jones is not in the game where you're clearly blowing a 20-point lead and literally your best player since the calendar turned to 2026, he has been the best player on the Friars, plain and simple. And then for Kim to go into the press conference after the game and say, well, it was freshman mistakes. That part just rubbed me completely the wrong way. Friend of the program, Matt Debs, I want to give a shout out, formerly known as Kim Spanglish, posted a video where he asked Kim about that, and it's weird to see the almost, I don't want to call it bias, but like it does feel like Vox gets a longer leash, and that's kind of I think what Matt was asking in the press conference. It's just the rotations in the minutes. It's just I don't know. I'm struggling to find the words, but it's just confusing, and you don't understand where Kim's head is at 90% of the time.
Yeah, and I understand Jameer makes some mistakes on both ends of the ball, and I think that Kim emphasizes like not making defensive mistakes, where you if you make a mistake on defense or you have a lapse where you just maybe you leave your man or you don't fill up a hole correctly or you don't rotate on defense, et cetera, then you probably won't. You might come out. You might have to sit. Not like as a punishment, but just like I want someone else in there like Milo or Floyd who can do those things. But he doesn't have that same attitude toward offense like with Vox. I mean, we've seen it a million times where Stephon Vox might make a really bad turnover or a really like arid pass or take a really, really bad shot. And those are just as bad as maybe a lapse on defense where you give up an easy bucket because you're basically giving the other team the ball. So, it does seem like there's certain things he emphasizes and the decisions that he makes can be very, very confusing. The rotations are maddening, have always been maddening, even year one where, a guy would be hot and then he would just come out of the game. Like finally getting his feet underneath him and then yanked. So, yeah, I mean, not much else to be said about, Kim's like on the court stuff. And this is to say that Kim isn't a very smart and brilliant basketball mind. It's just that being a head coach, especially in the Big East, is a very tough job. And sometimes basketball knowledge doesn't always translate to that right away. You might need to kind of take a step back, go a little bit lower, and then work his way back up.
I also wanted to mention, because the freshman mistakes, I think, excuse, I'm going to call it an excuse. Another friend of the program, Infantry Friar, went into Crier's spaces. Crier, friend of the program as well, went into Crier spaces after the game Saturday, and they were talking about Kim chalking Jameer being pulled to freshman mistakes. Infantry made a great point. What about fifth-year mistakes?
Yeah.
You see a guy like, and I don't want to throw Corey Floyd under the bus, but that was the example that was used. What about fifth-year mistakes? It doesn't matter if you're a freshman, sophomore. You could be a super senior in your ninth year. For some reason, you pulled all the red shirt rules and you went to the G League and you came back and, COVID year and all this. If you're making a mistake, you're making a mistake. Like, plain and simple, especially in a game like Georgetown, where like the fan base wanted that one so bad, you keep your best players in the game. Plain and simple.
Mm-hmm. Couldn't agree more. This isn't the first time this has happened. Last year, if you remember, when the offense was so stagnant, and we would get it over half court, dribble around, pass it around the 3-point line, force up a shot, whatever, go back on defense, rinse, repeat. And then Ryan Miller would come in. And what would happen when Ryan Miller came in is the offense, the floor would completely open up, the ball would be moved, everyone would kind of, rotate on offense, and you had a nice flow, and it was, passing and movement. But it took Kim so long to start Ryan Mila and play him legitimate minutes. And the fan base was begging for more Ryan Mila. And it took him to about I think it was UConn on the road, which was in January. And the season was pretty much over at that point for Mila to start. And then he kind of started the rest of the year. But I remember the press conference with Kim last year where he was like, with Mila and Oswin, we'll live with their mistakes, talking about freshman mistakes again. But last year, you had Wesley Cardette, and Jabri. Jabri had a weird year, whatever. Nothing against Jabri. But you had Wesley Cardette, you had, Corey Floyd, a lot of these guys that were just significantly underperforming. Jaden Pierre was turning the ball over like crazy, making so many mistakes. And, they were being still played over a guy like Ryan Mila. And Oswin was forced to play because we didn't really have a backup to Oswin. But I guarantee you, if we didn't have a starter to Oswin being a backup, but if we had a serviceable center last year, like, if Kreist kind of proved himself right away, that we could have played over Oswin, I guarantee you we would have been beaten down the door for Oswin too, saying, hey, this guy's got to play more. This guy's got to play more. It just, I don't know if it's stubbornness. I don't know if it's just, being prideful, but you got to just play your best players at this point.
Yeah, agreed. And unfortunately, it does feel like the season's cooked. Like, even, I think the Friars are capable of winning the Big East tournament, but like, if we're being realistic, season's cooked, unfortunately.
So yeah, while you're thinking, if I could just talk about the Big East tournament thing real quick.
Yeah.
When I watch this team play, especially against UConn, against St. John's, right, I feel those same exact feelings. But then when you think about it from a logical and rational standpoint, no team has ever won the Big East tournament without winning some grind out close games, whether it be overtime games or games that come down to the last few possessions. And the bottom line is this team is purely 100% incapable of winning close games. It's impossible. It won't ever happen. So, yes, they are talented enough to win the Big East tournament, but they don't have a winning attitude and a winning culture to, play 4 nights in a row. Like, I can't imagine winning 4 close games in a row. Like, it's going to be almost impossible. And they're all going to be relatively close. I mean, there might be like some 8-point games or whatever. But, dude, this team can't win the Big East tournament. I'm sorry. It's just they're talented enough, sure, but they don't have the winning culture to do that.
I agree that they're talented enough. And I was going to chalk it up to all right, maybe we got like a 5% chance of pulling it off. Just did a quick search while you were talking. Did you know? Here's another stat for you about the English era. The Friars have not won 4 non-bye games in a row under Kim English.
Yeah, see, there you go.
It's not happening. And I would love to be proven wrong. I'd love to see the Friars play in March. But even with Devin Carter and Josh Oduro, you're not winning 4 non-bye games in a row.
Yep.
It's
right.
So, I don't know.
And I don't want to hear, at the end of the day, I'm going to root for the Friars. If they win the Big East tournament, I'll be ecstatic. I'll be dancing. I'll be, doing fucking flips. And I don't want to hear the Patrick Ewing, thing about Patrick winning the Big East tournament with Georgetown and them, extending that relationship another 3 years because of it. It's a different situation. And if Kim does somehow make the tournament here this year and run the table or win the Big East tournament, then, I don't know if he'll have a willingness to want to stay, because I don't think he really, feels welcome. I think he might try to look for other opportunities, and it might kind of be like a handshake agreement where it's just all right, let's just kind of go our separate ways.
Yeah, and you bring up the Ewing thing. I think, if Kim would like to come back and the Friars win the Big East, it's like, okay, well, you kind of have to bring him back as much as like, unfortunately, like historically speaking, Kevin Keats at NC State goes on a Cinderella run, wins the ACC, takes his team to the Final Four, buys himself another year or two.
Mhm.
That's kind of hell for a fan base.
Yeah.
When you should part ways with a guy and, you go on this great run and it's like, I should be appreciating this, but like what's on the other side? Like what's to come next year? Is it just the same old song and dance? And I think we can agree we're in January. Like it's time. I can tell you how the rest of the season is going to go. But Bart Torvik has the Friars with the easiest strength of schedule remaining in the Big East. The Friars are currently 2-8 in conference play at the time of recording.
Yes, 2-8 and 12, 9 and 12. Yep.
Okay, 2-8 with the easiest schedule remaining in the Big East. You got UConn out of the way already twice. There are so many winnable games left on this schedule, and this Friars team could totally, finish 8-12, 9-11 in conference play, and it's like, oh yeah, well we ended the season hot. Like you keep, you retain Vox and Jones, and who knows what could happen next year. I don't want that. I think we've reached a point where it's pretty cut and dry. We should cut ties. I just don't want to become prisoner of the moment in early March when it's like, oh well, we just won like 5 out of 7.
Mhm.
Like maybe we're starting to put the pieces together. The pieces will never be put together under this regime.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I want to put that in the atmosphere too.
I agree. I think that just like I said with the after the St. John's win and halftime at UConn, where I don't think it takes much for this fan base to get behind a guy, to get behind a coach. And that's the other thing too, is this fan base doesn't ask for much. I see all people on Twitter being like, oh, they have ridiculously high expectations for the level of program that they are. I don't feel that that's true. We really just want to make the tournament. And honestly, I think all of Friartown and PC fans are okay with a coach if he doesn't make the tournament, once, twice, even 3 times, not consecutively, but like, if you go to the tournament back-to-back years, you win a couple games in March, and maybe you don't make it one year, then, back to the tournament, don't make it again, whatever, just like Cooley, right? Like, I mean, Cooley had a nice consecutive streak of like, I think he had like 4 in a row or 5 in a row. But there was plenty of times where he missed the tournament, even with very talented rosters. I mean, David Duke was amazing in Providence, and that team missed the tournament by quite a bit. So, it's just like we don't ask for a ton, but we're going to probably go 2 years in a row with finishing in the bottom 4 of the conference. If your theory proves correct, we'll probably finish closer to like, 7, maybe 6, whatever. But I don't necessarily agree that we could finish 9-11 just based off of like, yeah, we'll be favored. We'll probably play some teams really well, and we'll probably look like we're ready to blow the doors off some teams. But this team just can't hold lead. Like, it's really bad. I mean, and even Georgetown. I mean, Georgetown's really bad. Like, they're not good. And you can't hold that lead, like that big of a lead against that team. Eye-opening.
Yeah. 8-12, 9-11 was probably a stretch. I'm just on the Torvik site, so I'm using these predicted outcomes. If the outcomes hold true, the Friars are projected to finish 6-14 in the Big East, which I think is probably a little more realistic. But yeah, and Leb, you mentioned the expectations, and I agree. I don't think the expectations are too lofty at all. I think you've seen this program succeed. I don't know if sleeping giant's the word, but it's a program with life, and that can be successful and has proven to be successful under multiple different, coaching regimes. But I do want to put in perspective, again, I guess another anti-English stat. This episode's going to come out Thursday, January 29th. So if you're listening to it the day it's released, tomorrow is January 30th, which means 3 years ago from January 30th, the Providence Friars were the number 17 ranked team in the country. Since then, we've had 2 straight years of being bottom dwellers in the conference. The fall needs to be studied, and I think there's a common denominator that we've beat the drum pretty hard so far this episode. But, 3 short years ago, this was a team that was easily top 20 in the country. You're in the thick of it for your second straight Big East regular season title.
Mhm.
And then obviously the Cooley fall off and that whole thing happened. We've been over that. But it's not a ridiculous expectation to be like, hey, let's make a couple appearances in the top 25, fight for a tournament berth. That's not a crazy expectation. And I just the bar has not been met in English's tenure.
Yeah. And really, when you look at it, there's only really 2 coaches in the modern era that have not made the NCAA tournament here. And if Kim English does get fired this year in year 3, the only 2 that will never have played in a tournament game, dating back to the 1 year after Rick Pitino with Gordy Chiesa, is Kim English and Keno Davis. So, like, every coach has found a way to play in the NCAA tournament. Ed Cooley, Tim Welsh. Welsh was probably the most disappointing out of those. He only played in 2, out of the years that he was here. But Pete Gillen, Elite 8. Rick Barnes, obviously, not a lot of success in the tournament, but went to 3 NCAA tournaments. Rick Pitino, Final Four. Joe Mulaney, that was his second term, not that great. But Dave Gavitt. So you go back and it's like, again, we don't ask for a ton, and it's not really that hard to win here, but it's a different landscape. So I think that patience is needed. I'm not asking for you to be patient with Kim. I'm not asking for a year 4. But if we do hire a new coach this year, then we could turn around really fast year 1, but that's really not the expectation. We're going to need to be a little patient with the new coach, but just like Xavier is right now with Richard Pitino, every win is a building block for the future. So you got to make the tournament here. Doesn't have to be every single year, but you gotta do it frequently.
Yeah, and shout out to Richard Pitino, potential Friar, but he's doing a good job in year 1. And I think a product of the reason, I would argue one of the only reasons Xavier is not going to be a tournament team is because it's all new guys. It's a full new roster. So that's like another thing we may be looking at next season is 13 to 15 new guys, just completely new faces, which is a completely foreign concept, I think, in this, at least for the Friars. Now that the landscape is what it is,
yeah,
you could totally see just a clean slate, completely new faces. But that's really what Richard Pitino's looking at right now.
So I think that's a good segue. Obviously, we all have our opinions on the coaching search and who we would like to see, and I think there's a couple hot names where if you asked any program in the country right now, they would certainly take them. But I also want to hear kind of like maybe your list. If you had a desk drawer with a list in it, right? Just like Sir Steve Napolillo did a few years ago. Who would be on your desk drawer list?
Let me know if you can hear me opening my desk drawer.
I can, yes.
You can? Okay, fantastic. Yeah. Desk drawer is opened.
All right.
Full transparency, I've had a note in my phone all season. It's labeled Friar Off-Season Wish List. And I had my list ready before I even was in the belief that Kim wouldn't see year 4. So it's a work in progress. Full transparency. Even like potential transfers. Like I have like a list of guys that could enter the portal, and just like when I'm watching college hoops, I'll just throw their name in there.
Hell yeah.
But I have a list of guys. Obviously, I think Josh Schertz is number one.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he's got to be number one for any Friars fan. He's the hottest name in probably the coaching carousel search world right now. And then there's a few other guys that's just like different variables play into it. You know, are you going to pull a guy from a mid-major? Are you going to pull a guy from another power conference? But then that argument kind of gets weird because like, oh, well, if he's not succeeding at one power conference school, how do we know it's going to work at another power conference school? And you kind of get the I told you so effect.
Sure.
Guys like Porter Moser
Mm-hmm.
that are on the hot seat at Oklahoma. I didn't even know he was on the hot seat, but I think I might add him to my list. Is Dana Altman at Oregon,
Mm-hmm.
who, unbeknownst to me, was on the hot seat. But he's a guy that's succeeded in March, and he's kind of fit that build that you just talked about, Leb, is like make the tournament consistently. It's probably not going to be every year. Win a game or two every once in a while. Like, I feel like that's kind of been Oregon for the last few years.
Yep.
And then you look at mid-major guys. I'm a big Leb. I told you maybe in November. I'm a big Phil Martelli guy.
Yep.
Bring him back to Rhode Island. John Becker from UVM's another guy that's interesting. There's a laundry list of names I got, but they all come with their different variables, and I could probably rant about each of them for 5 or 10 minutes. So, what do you think?
Yeah, and I think it's really more like about the buckets that these guys fall into. Like you said, like you have your mid-major guys maybe that didn't have success elsewhere that are experienced, and you know they're good with the media. You know they have a lot of ability to be what you want right away, right? And they fall into a bucket which is safe, but might not be like a home run. You know, it might be like you're trying to hit a double, like with a guy like Porter Moser or Dana Altman or like a Mick Cronin, right? Like, because you look at it, it's like, all right, well, if you can't win at UCLA, you know, if you can't win at Oklahoma, if you can't win at Oregon, you know, what makes you think that you could win at PC, right? And then you have the bucket of like the Beckers and James Joneses, which are, you know, more like low majors,
Mm-hmm.
but they have a lot of experience and they've been loyal to like one particular program. And maybe it's finally their time to take a step. You know, I mean, James Jones has done a phenomenal job at Yale. You know, Becker's done a phenomenal job in his very long coaching tenure. And you have a lot of guys that fit into that bucket, right? And then you have your I would say your rising stars, as Dan Hurley likes to say. Your rising stars that mostly are going to be found in the A-10, in, you know, the West Coast Conference, maybe the MAC, you know, whatever. Those are your, you know, like last year it was Richard Pitino, you know. This year it's Josh Schertz. I mean, he's that guy. And that's probably my favorite bucket to look at, because that's where you find your home runs, right? You might fail, you know, and I think Kim English came from that bucket too, although Kim was a little weirder because he didn't really have a lot of success at George Mason. But when you look at that bucket, you see like really home run potential. And I think Phil Martelli is almost in that bucket if he was a little more removed from, you know, Bryant. Like 1 year at VCU to me is great, but I would like to maybe, if you're going to bring in a guy like that who's young, you know, I worry that it would be another situation that you had with Kim, where you didn't have a ton of head coaching experience at the D1 level before you threw him into the fire at a job that there is a lot of pressure, you know. So I like the idea of Phil and the fact that he comes with his dad, right, who's got a ton of coaching experience. But that one kind of maybe scares me with a little more risk involved, which is why I was against it at first. But, you know, it is growing on me. So amongst those buckets, you know, would you like maybe more of a safe pick, or would you maybe like to kind of take that risk and go for the home run?
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, you'd like to go for the home run, but I think we see what swinging for the fences looks like right now.
Mhm.
I can tell you what I think the athletic department will do is make a safe hire. So I could totally see a power conference coach come over, and it's like, okay, he understands the landscape of and recruiting at this type of level. Going up against a Villanova or a UConn isn't gonna deter him by any means, because he's gone up against a Kansas or a Houston or a Kentucky before. Like, it's not like some guy who was squaring off against, I don't know, East Carolina last year. So I don't know. I think a power conference guy would make the most sense. However, if you want to swing for a home run, I got a name, and I haven't seen it on anyone's list yet. Kevin Hovde, I believe. Kevin Hovde at Columbia.
Wow.
And this is the definition of home run. Like, this is his first year as a head coach. Ivy League guy with 1 year of head coaching experience. I don't recommend, if anyone, for some reason, anyone in the program is listening to this, do not make that swing. Don't take that risk. But he's the definition of a home run swing. He was an assistant under Todd Golden last year. I believe was his offensive guy. And he might have made a stop somewhere else before Florida. He was part of the whole like nerd ball analytics thing, very analytics driven on offense. And basically anywhere he goes, like the offense, like if you look at the numbers before and after Hovde, the offensive numbers just skyrocket. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but that's a guy I get a little excited about, but I don't know if I would want PC to take a swing on a guy like that with 1 year of head coaching experience in the Ivy League. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I those like really big time sleepers are the kind of move you make when I don't know, like if I'm like DePaul, I always wondered why they go for like a more safe pick, like a Stubblefield, or they brought back Dave Leto, and then with Chris Holtman, like I like that hire, but again, it's like kind of like, all right, well, we've already seen what he can do, and there's a reason why he was out of the Big East. I feel like if you have nothing to lose, that's like you're just swinging for the fences, and I think that's where you could really make one of those hires. With the position that we're in, we can't afford another disaster. So a guy with 1 year experience at an Ivy League school, I'm probably out on.
Yeah.
And
It's just exciting. Just the name kind of excites me a little bit, but I agree. I don't think we're in that position to be swinging for the fences.
Definitely. And it is exciting, like, because you could find your next, like, Mark Few or Brad Stevens or, Todd Golden, right? By kind of doing it that way and hiring a younger guy. But you can also find your next Kim English, right? And that's, that's scary to think that we could go down that road twice. I really like I think that the two biggest jobs right now that people are kind of thinking that are going to open are PC and Cincinnati. Now, my only concern is if there's a trickle-down effect where, like, Cincinnati, maybe instead of going with Shirts, maybe they want to bring back Mick Cronin from UCLA. And maybe UCLA opens up. And then now we're behind the 8 ball for Shirts with UCLA. Even though UCLA, a lot of times they'll poach from high majors, still, I think that, they need they need a guy who is motivated to build a high major program instead of like a guy coming from a high major. But I think we are at the top of the list for Shirts. My question would be, after dealing with the Ed Cooley thing, getting poached from in conference, Georgetown. How do you feel about like a Richard Pitino or a Shaheen Holloway?
Yeah, Shaheen Holloway is another name. I completely forgot that one as well. I think after 2023, it's clear Val Ackerman just doesn't give a fuck about that stuff.
Mhm.
And, I think it'd be easy to call PC fans hypocrites if that were to happen.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, like you want your program to be back and I hate to sympathize with Georgetown, but like you sometimes you got to play a little dirty. I think Richard Pitino makes a lot of sense. Like, PC alum, Shaheen Holloway is super interesting to me because obviously he's an alumni of Seton Hall, but I think if there's any coach in the country that's going to get you back to like the nitty gritty Providence identity,
Yeah.
like just like the tough identity, I think Shaheen Holloway, like out of all the coaches we just named, Shaheen Holloway is 101 if you want to get back to just like the gritty, beat the fuck out of you, take your lunch money, Providence Friars teams. So yeah, Shaheen Holloway, if I were to make a hashtag the list, which I think we're kind of workshopping our hashtag the list right now.
Yeah.
Shaheen Holloway would definitely be up there because I love that type of identity Friars teams.
Yeah, I think like if you gave Shaheen, $7 million worth of roster money to play with, I think that not only would that be intriguing to him coming from the situation, at Seton Hall, but I think he maybe could put together a really phenomenal team with that and build a culture. That's what he does, and that's what he's doing at Seton Hall.
Mm-hmm. Well said. I saw a couple people talking about this as well, and I wanted your thoughts on it because I wasn't, I guess, totally sentient for the Keno Davis days.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen a lot of people comparing the Keno Davis era to the Kim English era.
Mm-hmm.
Is the English era worse than the Keno Davis era?
Well, worse if you stacked them side by side, blind resume.
Mm-hmm.
Like, no, I wouldn't say it's worse. The thing is, Keno had far less expectations, so Kim is going to be remembered as worse than Keno. But on paper, like I wouldn't say that. The thing that made Keno worse and probably was the nail in the coffin for year 3 or year 4 Keno, and the reason why he wasn't back was because one, you really didn't have a good team coming in for the following year because Marshawn Brooks was going to the draft. And the other thing, too, is the off the court issues, which really haven't happened under Kim. Like, there was a lot of issues. Players were getting in fights with students, and, we had a lot of weird situations happening at that time. So, in my opinion, Keno actually probably was worse, but Kim is going to ultimately leave PC fans with a worse feeling because we were, we were contending for a top 3 spot in the league when Kim took over.
Yeah, I didn't think about the, I guess, expectations aspect because as much as we hate him, big shoes to fill as far as the modern era of Friars hoops when you're succeeding. I don't know how to whatever after Ed Cooley. So yeah, I totally see what you mean. But yeah, man, I've been plugging away at the list. I didn't want to rant too much on each individual guy, but I think I'm gonna publish a hashtag the list.
Definitely, you should. And I mean, this is. I will say it's a shitty situation to be in. We don't ever want to be in this situation, but where we're at in our kind of role, this is it can be a little fun to kind of theorize and see it unfold in front of our eyes. I think that there's going to be a lot of misinformation that we hear about. There's going to be some good information that we hear about. The bottom line is, when you have a lame duck situation like Kim, where you're not like with Cooley, you were a little blindsided, so you didn't really have time to kind of like put together a good idea of who you want and start reaching out to agents. But now you got all the time in the world, just like Georgetown did 3 years ago, right? When they identified their guy in January, right?
Yeah.
This is Knapp's turn to do that and put some thought and some care into it. And I think Knapp deserves another shot at this.
Agreed.
We've been very clear that, this isn't on Knapp. I think that, I don't know the inner workings of PC Athletics. I can't say if Knapp is doing a good job or if he's doing a bad job. I can say that he cares about PC basketball and he wants to see us win. So find, your guy, identify them, find the money, right? And make a home run hire. That's all you got to do.
Mm-hmm. I'll tell you what, Knapp's not sitting Jameer for the first 15 minutes of the second half in a rivalry game.
No,
So,
he's not. He's not.
Yeah.
And he's not turning the ball over, and listen, like, I'm not here to put blame on anyone. I think there's plenty of blame to go around. But at some point, the blame or the accountability has to be on the head coach of the team. That's just it, in my opinion.
Agreed. Yeah, and I think in 3 years you have a big enough sample size. Unfortunately, it's ran its course. We all wanted it to work out, obviously, for the for the benefit of the program. But everything comes to an end. So, I think we've obviously, I think, seen the end of the English era, and I think that's about it for anything I have eulogy-wise for Kim English's tenure in Providence.
Yeah, that's fair. Before we go, any thoughts on the UConn game last night specifically that you wanted to touch on? We really haven't got a chance to talk about that. Not a ton to talk about. Another close game that you had a chance to win but couldn't, and that's pretty much it. Anything specific you want to touch on there?
Yeah, no, I think after that Georgetown loss, I kind of, you knew the season was done, and I tried to not get myself too high or too low from watching the UConn game. I think they did a good job competing, but like, it's a tale as old as time. This is kind of the theme of the last 2 years. Like, you're in it, but are you really going to win? Are you really going to pull out a win? So, if you asked me if this game was played a month ago, I'd be like, oh, hell yeah. Like, way to compete on the road against the number 2 team in the country.
Sure.
But I think, at least myself, have almost entered that apathy phase. And you kind of didn't want at the beginning of the year. Like, that's really the biggest fear. More than an angry fan base, you don't want an apathetic fan base. And
yeah,
I think that's clear with the last hour that we've talked, is like we're kind of looking ahead a little bit.
Definitely. Absolutely. I think your laundry's done.
My laundry is done.
So,
someone in the YouTube comments
yes,
a few months ago was like, oh, is that the LG front loader washing machine? I didn't even realize it went off while we were recording, but yeah. So I have an LG front loader.
Yeah, we got some.
I don't know the exact model.
We got some washing machine perverts. If you're picking up on the washing machine sounds and you can name the model, you're just you're a weird little fucker.
The jingle is very distinct, though. I will say, like, if that went off in someone else's house, I'd be like, oh, dude, I have the same washing machine.
Okay, fine.
It's
whatever.
so distinct.
Yeah, and this is where we're at as a fan base.
Yeah.
We should be talking about, the tournament and the path to the tournament. Instead, we're talking about washing machines and what it'll take to get Shaheen Holloway.
We're back to where we started. I think we were doing our season preview and we were talking about appliances. Panasonic. I think Mike was saying Panasonic microwaves, and now we're talking about LG washing machines, and life is
Yeah.
like a circle. Life is like a circle.
Time is definitely a flat circle. Well, I don't know if you have anything else. Obviously, we covered a lot,
Yeah.
but yeah, we're gonna try to pump out as many episodes as possible. We want to be there for you guys. Obviously, it's a tough season. It's a tough go. This is the second year in a row, but better times are ahead, and this program is destined to be competitive. It's not we're not asking for national championships. Probably not really ever going to win a national championship, if I'm being honest. But we will compete. We will be in the NCAA tournament. We have too much fan interest, great facilities, great donor base, a phenomenal fan base, and we play in an almost NBA-sized arena. So the tools are all here.
Just one quick note. We are going to win a national championship.
I love it.
Not this year. Maybe not next year in year one under a new coach. But we're going to see a Providence College national championship. I don't know when, but it's going to fucking happen.
As Ed Cooley said, I don't want one. I don't want two. I don't want three. As long as I'm here, I want them all.
That fat fuck thought he was LeBron.
He really was. Yeah. I'm trying to think, was that the same, like almost the same exact time? Because LeBron went to Miami. Wow, that was like 20.
It was like 3 months after, I think. Because was LeBron's first season 2011?
It was I think it was 2010, 2011. So like 20. I think.
Okay, so like a year.
Yeah, it was like yeah. He went there in the summer. We hired Ed in like March, so it was like like 9 months apart.
Yeah.
I want them all.
Fat fuck. Listen, I will say he might have bought himself a year 4.
He might have.
With that win on Saturday. So hopefully, if we get a new coach, he understands the weight of that game, and we can get our get back. And don't let that fat fuck get the last laugh.
Yeah, we're recording on Wednesday night, January 28th. And Georgetown is playing DePaul tonight.
Oh.
And Ed Cooley has an unbelievably bad track record against DePaul. So honestly, like this game probably is more important for Ed Cooley because he needs to bury that demon of, no pun intended, right? The Blue Demons, of beating DePaul, because he's lost to them every single time he's played them, right? Like since he's been at Georgetown.
So with the omission of year 1 where DePaul went 0-20.
Oh, okay.
But even I think both those games were one possession.
Yeah. That was right. That was it with year 1. Cooley, the only wins were against DePaul, and then he went on a massive losing streak.
He went 0-3 last year,
0-3, and then 0-1 this year. So this would be this would be 5 in a row against DePaul, and this is at home. So if you can't beat DePaul year 3, then you're in a really tough spot. But yeah, he might if he wins tonight. Factoring in the PC win, he's got a really good like top 25 recruit coming in. Then he might have saved his job for year 4, which I'm all for. Bring Ed Cooley back. We'll show the new coach how much we despise Ed Cooley, and it'll maybe make him a little scared of leaving. Like, oh, I don't want to leave these guys.
Yeah, right. Especially if he's a winner.
Yeah.
I want to give a shout out. The Friday night before the Georgetown game, Crier and BOC hosted a live show at Black Sheep. That was a ton of fun. Got to meet Crier, BOC. Had met Billy, a month or so before. Kevin Farahar. I want to get the pronunciation right, but I'm not sure if I'm getting it right. Sure. But it was cool to have. I wish you and Mike, obviously could have made it, but it was cool to be around the other, creators in the space of this sicko fan base Friar world. So yeah, hopefully, there's more opportunities to do more stuff like that. It was a cool to kind of shoot the shit with them a little bit. And it was just a fun night out in the spirit of fuck Ed Cooley.
Definitely. And I would love to, do something with them and come together. There's so many great media outlets. And we all kind of have our different roles and share our different avenues. And it's great to have everyone come together. We're kind of like the newer ones in the space. So it's hard to like, I always kind of felt a little timid, like, reaching out to some of those guys, but, I don't want them to think that we're, trying to be them or be someone that we're not. Obviously we're just our own thing and are completely different from them. And I did finally meet Billy. He's a great guy. We talked for a little bit before the game and just a really nice guy. I don't think I've ever met BOC. I have met Crier a little while ago, but I'm excited to kind of do more with them and bring everyone together, because this is when the fan base really needs it. I mean, fan base needs to come together and survive this storm.
Yeah, we'll have when we hire a new coach, fan base will be all energized, and before the season, right before the new season, maybe we can do something like that when the fan base is kind of bought back in.
Definitely, absolutely, sounds good. Anything else you got for tonight?
Friar, supposed to get an Avid Mindsetter debut today. He kind of big leagued us, but other than that, that's all I got.
Yeah, he had some obligations, that's okay. Mike had some obligations, but we're back, back at square one. But Mike will be back, and we'll have Abbott on the show at some point. He does a lot of editing for us, and he's a really just hilariously funny kid, and he's a really good kid, So he has a passion for this, so we'll have him on, and Mike will be back, and then we'll go into baseball season, and the Red Sox, will be looking good, and we'll talk some baseball a little bit, and have some Fenway outings, and it'll be, Divine Providence will have a lot of fun.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. Go Friars. Let's maybe try to find some W's somewhere, and that's it.
Go Friars. Ed Cooley knew.
Peace.